The Street Corner Soapbox. The Street Corner Soapbox with Fausto and Willin. Podcast takeover. We're making a killing. Music to nightlife. Debauchery and street news. Serving it hot. We are some street news, movies and mayhem. The craziest guests, words from chaos. Get it off our chest. Rhode Island, worldwide. Dark corners in all places. Speak how we live. Radio show. Smoking aces. Ladies and gents, for the people we're talking. Take the show on the road, right where you're walking. Yeah.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Street Corner Soapbox Podcast coming to you live.
That's right, boys and girls. Street Corner Soapbox. Now, we all know during this crazy time with the pandemic, businesses are struggling. So we're here to support local businesses, and we need your help to do so also.
That's right. So subscribe to our Patreon, become a member to help support the show, and receive exclusive episodes and bonus content, as well as discounts on merch. That's patreon.com/streetcorner_soapbox2020.
Follow us on our website, streetcornersoapbox.com.
That's right, boys and girls. We are back live. Street Corner Soapbox. I'm with my brother, Lord Willin.
Os.
What up, what up, what up?
Yo, what's going on, man?
We're here with Coach Tye.
Coach Tye Tonkin, my brother, what's going on?
What's happening, guys?
Sanda Fighting Arts.
That's right.
We are here in Watertown, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston.
Right, shout out to Watertown.
Ty recently opened this gym. How long has it been now?
Let's see. We opened like a week or so into July.
Okay, so
year.
It's been a couple months, and how's it been going?
Going good, man. I mean, it's been a slow open,
right?
Obviously, with everything going on, but like steady growth. Every month we grow a little bit bigger. Get new signups, new members, everything like that. So it's going good. Classes are staying small, but there's been a lot of progress here, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, man. And I actually train here too, so. I'm saying this unbiased, but this is a top-notch facility. We'll post up some pictures and video on our Instagram and social media, but it's definitely a top-notch facility. Ty's a top-notch instructor, one of the best around. So if you're looking to get
the kind words.
No, it's true. And I'm not just saying that, because we're friends, but legit, he's a good instructor. He's been doing it for a long time, which we're going to get into.
Yeah, the gym's fucking dope.
Yeah. How long total have you been into martial arts now?
Let's see. I've been training for 22 years.
Okay, so yeah, obviously 22 years, and you know what you're doing. So if you're in the area, if you're in the Boston, even if you're in the New England area, period, and you're looking to get some training in, make sure you check it out, man. We're gonna get into all that.
Yeah, wasn't a bad drive here from Rhode Island too. So
it's about an hour. It's about 15, 20 minutes outside of Boston.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Not even, yeah. I mean, it depends on where you're coming from.
Right,
we're just north of it.
Okay,
we're right next to Cambridge and everything.
If you're in this area, there's no reason not to check it out.
Come on down.
Yes, sir. So let's get into the beginnings of your martial arts career. How you got into kung fu? I mean, and we'll go from there.
Well, I was born in a misty mountain in. No, I'm just. Well, when I was a kid, when I was. Growing up, I was just kind of crazy like a lot of kids, and I wasn't really super into sports or anything. So my parents got me into karate. I started in Kempo karate, like Ed Parker Kempo, like a lot of people do.
Sure.
And I did that for years, more or less, just because I was forced to. I enjoyed it, but it was like I was dropped off. I did my thing, and I trained until I was like 11 or so, and then I got like a junior black belt, whatever like the equivalent of that was at the time. And I was like, all right, I'm going to take a little break. And the school that I was at in Concord, New Hampshire, it was like Concord Karate Studios, closed and ended up like moving away while I was like taking a break. So like maybe 6 months later, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back into it. And it was gone.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, shit, well, I'm not going to do that. So I decided to get into something else. So I ended up grabbing the phone book, like grabbing the yellow pages. This is back when you found
people used to do that.
Yeah, when you found shit in the fucking phone book, and just like called a bunch of places because I wanted to keep doing something. I just didn't want to do karate, so I ended up calling like I don't know, maybe a half a dozen different gyms all over the area in Concord that I was at. And the only place that ended up calling me back was Averill's Martial Arts Academy, which is where I trained for the most part. From when I was young I'm still in touch with my first coach now, Paul Averill. And originally I was going there because they had listed that they did Aikido, and I had no idea what that was. I didn't know anything about, even though I did karate for a long time, I didn't know anything about martial arts. I just knew that that's what I did.
Right.
And Aikido sounded cool, like Japanese words, just it sounded like a cool art.
Steven Seagal.
Yeah, it's like, didn't actually know anything about the training, but so they called me back, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check it out. And I remember like going down. I think I was 12 or 13 at this point, after having like taken a little break, and I went in and they're like, oh, well, there's like an Aikido group or whatever that trains here, but it's not like an Aikido school. And they primarily did boxing and kickboxing and traditional Kung Fu and Tai Chi. But I didn't like the sound of Kung Fu. It just sounded goofy to me.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't know anything about it at the time, but they have like all the like traditional weapons training. Yep. So there's all the weapons on the wall. And I remember looking at it and being like, oh, that's cool. How do I get into that? And they're like, oh, that's the Kung Fu training. You got to do that. So when I was 12 or 13, I started doing traditional Chinese martial arts. I remember taking like a trial class, and I literally took every class that they offered from that day forward for years.
Including Aikido?
No, not the Aikido. I never ended up doing the Aikido. And I did Kung Fu for maybe 6 months to 9 months or so. And I remember telling my coach, like, oh, I love this. I want to be a martial artist. Like, this is what I want to do with my whole life. And he's like, okay, well, and you're going to start doing like internal training. You got to start doing the Tai Chi, and you got to start doing kickboxing and actually doing like combat sports stuff, so that you can like apply the stuff that you're learning. So yeah, when I started doing that at Averill's Martial Arts Academy, started with Kung Fu, and then started to get into the kickboxing and stuff like that, and I've been training ever since.
So you were doing the internal stuff too from a young age.
Yeah.
Started.
Yep.
A lot of people, I mean, I think in at least the Western world probably don't typically get into that until later on, right?
Yeah, and I didn't like it at first at all. Now I love it. Like I love the balance. I think everybody should do.
Do you think as a kid
training.
it was beneficial to maybe get into say Tai Chi or Qigong or meditation because maybe it helped you focus more?
Oh, 100%. I'm crazy ADD. Like I'm just off the wall in general. Like if I didn't have those like tools to be able to focus, I wouldn't have made it as far as I did, even just training, let alone like in life. But yeah, I mean, it was like super difficult for me in the beginning. I didn't want to do any kind of internal training. I remember being like, Tai Chi is like that slow meditation stuff that they do. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And my coach was like, no, you said you want to be a martial artist. It's not I think you should do. It's you're going to start doing.
If you want to be that
and I was
requirement.
Like, oh, yep, yeah. Okay, whatever you say. Like I'll start doing it.
How did you find going from, let me ask you this, because I had a similar beginnings of my martial arts career too. How did you find going from the karate school to going now over to the Chinese style Kung Fu?
It was actually kind of difficult. I mean, I remember, and again, I was young. I didn't know anything. I didn't really have any skill, even in karate. I just had been doing it for a few years. But like, I remember taking that first class, and like in my head, I was just like, oh, this is going to be easy because I've done years of karate. This isn't going to be nothing, right? And then I remember some of the mechanics and like root and stances and stuff just being like more difficult and having a hard time doing some of the basic drills. But I was like stoked on that. And I was like, okay, like this is actually a little more substantial. Like it takes a little bit more even just to get the fundamentals, the basics. But I really liked that. Like I liked the difficulty. And I liked that anytime I had questions, they actually had answers for it. So I'd be like, okay, well, why are we doing this? And they'd say, oh, well, you're trying to develop roots. So if someone tries to like sweep you or take you down, you need to have a stronger connection to the ground, or you need to generate better power from the ground and turning your hips. So it was actually difficult for me to kind of have that background and have like the preconception of what training was going to be without understanding that like different martial arts have different fundamentals and, you know, just differences in general. So it was a challenge, but I like really liked it. Like I like things that are difficult and like make me work towards something that's a little bit harder. So that's how I ended up getting into it.
That's how you get better too. You're not going to get better just staying at the same level.
Well, it's cool you can apply everything to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Tons of different variables you can work with. So
yeah,
right.
So learning all that shit definitely fucking you applied it and made it even better.
It applies to everything, not even just like physical stuff, right?
Just
it's
life
like
in general.
Yeah, is figuring out how to adapt and overcome and like apply what you have to what you need to do ahead is it can be difficult, but I mean that's what you need. Those are the skill sets you need.
Otherwise, if it wasn't difficult, you're not going to play yourself as much. You're not going to really probably progress anyway.
Nah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about learning White Crane Kung Fu with you were training with Dr. Yang?
Yeah. So
Dr. Yang.
Yang.
Dr. Yang Jingming. I started training with my first coach, Paul Averill in New Hampshire. One of his teachers is Dr. Yang Jingming, who founded Yang's Martial Arts Association, YMAA. And the headquarters school was here in Boston and has been for 35, 40 years now.
Yeah, well known.
And so I remember going through and training, and I remember getting like my black belt through that first system with my first coach, and him saying like, well, I'm happy to keep coaching you. I can keep, giving you any material that you need and prepping you for whatever. But if you want to go even further with the traditional stuff, you should seek out some of these guys and try to go down to Boston and start training with them. So I started coming down here and taking classes like on the weekends and starting to learn like the YMAA curriculum for two main styles of Kung Fu. One's Northern Long Fist, which is what I was doing already, and then the other was the Southern White Crane. And I came for some of the other stuff. I actually first started training for some of the Chin-Na, which is like the joint locking training that they teach. But when I started learning the White Crane Kung Fu, it was very similar in like I had a foundation, and I had a foundation in Chinese martial arts. And when I started learning the White Crane, it was extremely difficult and really complex, like crazy mechanics, like learning how to soften your body and move with like really sharp whipping power, and just a different concept as like a Southern Kung Fu style to a Northern Kung Fu style. Like there's differences, and even though it's all Kung Fu, it was stuff I had never really seen or done. And I fell in love with it, and I just started training that nonstop and kind of totally dived into the YMAA curriculum. I was coming down every weekend. I was actually at the time living in Vermont and driving like 4 hours on a Friday morning to take all the Friday classes down here, staying Saturday and Sunday, taking the Monday morning classes, and then shooting back up to Vermont for the week because I liked it that much. I just thought it was absolutely amazing.
For those that don't know, maybe give a brief history on White Crane Kung Fu.
So White Crane Kung Fu is a Southern style. It's talked about as like a sister style to Wing Chun, for anybody that knows Wing Chun.
Sure.
Southern styles of Kung Fu are like close range systems. So Long Fist, for instance, is a Northern style that emphasizes more kicking, more long range movements and hopping in and out and using your legs. The Southern styles, like specifically White Crane, was developed to like defend boats and being in like rice fields, which is it's grown in water. So it's like really slick and slippery. So it's a close range system. It has a lot of like really close hand positions. It does a lot of like body mechanics to develop striking power, really, really sharp, and to be able to move kind of soft and smooth in the body. And then a lot of like locking techniques, because when you're close range and you can grab onto someone to try to take them down, again, like on some slippery surface, like if you're trying to defend your boat, once you go, you're starting to move and take big steps, you're going to slip on a wet surface. So you try to take somebody down and, take them out on the ground once they're there, but you try to stay up. So there's a lot of joint locks. There's a lot of close range stuff. And the White Crane is what's called like a soft hard style. So there's like hard styles, like a Hungar, for instance, which is like tiger claws, like very hard, very muscular, very aggressive. And then there's soft styles, or even like Tai Chi, which is a soft style, which is like relaxed body positions and being able to move and twist and turn and kind of stay relaxed. And White Crane is both. So it has like a heavy emphasis on being very strong and being like very rooted, but being able to move with that and stay soft and move really quickly. Because a White Crane isn't like trying to mimic the sort of fighting style of the animals, right? So White Crane isn't like inherently a strong animal like a tiger is. But it has to be sharp, it has to be quick, and it has to be able to, move quickly in and out and stuff like that.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, I mean, right, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the origins of those styles of Kung Fu, like you just said, they mimic the animals that they found the inspiration from.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like the crane, the tiger, the mantis, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Chinese martial arts, a lot of Kung Fu, a lot of the styles mimic the animal styles, like you were saying, and a lot of it comes like nowadays. You always hear like we just call it Shaolin Kung Fu. It comes from the temples in China, and the idea in the temples was always like, okay, you learn like a base of Kung Fu, and then all right, you're at a certain level. Now you have to make it even better, right? You're always supposed to add to the arts, and so you're out one day and you see a White Crane defending itself or fighting against a snake, and you see how it moves and what does it use for tactics to stay safe and stay at a certain range and how to maneuver. And so they go, oh, okay, that animal knows how to fight instinctually, right? That's like a live, natural fighting style. And so they try to mimic that, whether it's the white crane, like you said, a tiger, praying mantis, anything like that. A lot of it is studying, like eagles, how the eagle comes in to try to catch its prey and go off there. I did eagle claw for a little while as well, but like, so like that's how a lot of those styles developed. And then there's like different branches of those where different people emphasize maybe one thing or another, and it became a subsect of something else that they did.
I find it interesting how that all came to be. Like someone just saw the movements of whatever animal and said, wow, this is, they're, like you said, they're natural.
Yeah, you just break down that.
Naturally
style.
fighting it within nature without, it's just natural instincts. And we can apply that to being humans and defending ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's pretty cool.
How does a tiger, push forward and be aggressive and control and stuff like that? And, well, that's working. So let's try to mimic something like that.
Yeah, man. A lot of people might not realize that, but
I didn't realize it actually at all. I thought they just that was just how they coded stuff or whatever.
No, it was literally they literally took the inspiration from the animals.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, so when you watch all those old kung fu movies, watch how they move and how they develop.
So what would like praying mantis be?
Praying mantis is like if you watch a mantis, it's very fast, right? Mm-hmm. And it uses like the front hooks. Yep. So you see that applied in like the way that they move. There's like a very distinctive like hand form that you'll see where like it's a lot of pulling and grabbing with the hand and being really quick in and out and being able to kind of like move back and forth. Sometimes they say like you got to be the bug, like you got to feel the way that a praying mantis would use its arms and to be able to seize and grab and stuff like that. And so you study that, you study how it catches its prey, and that's how you fight.
Do you think people maybe masters still observe the animals like they did in the early days?
Oh, of course, definitely. I still do. Yeah. So I always say anytime you see like an animal from an animal style of kung fu or something like that, they're called like the old masters, right? Because they really know the style, obviously, because it's built in them. So yeah, if you study the animals, watch how like animals naturally fight and defend themselves, and you can learn from that. Even today, you can still learn from that. You can kind of take your inspiration from that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that applies to a lot of areas of life too, not even just combat.
Of course.
And one thing about Tye too is that when I first met him, when we started talking about martial arts, he's very knowledgeable in his area. You know what I'm saying? Like some people, we don't have to get into a whole thing about it, but some people they train a certain style and they don't really know the history and the roots. But he fucking definitely does, and I give him a lot of props on that. He's a student of the culture.
Yeah, hey man, like I said, like I was at a young age. I remember sitting in my first coach's office, being like, "This is what I want to do." Yeah, and I've done it ever since.
You went all in.
I wanted to learn more and more and more. I wanted to understand deeper where the stuff that I was doing came from and why it came from it and why you do certain things and then how to apply it. That was always like my big thing.
Yeah, man. So around what time did you actually start getting into Sanda Kickboxing? Was that when with Paul Averill?
Yeah, so I started doing kickboxing when I was like 13, really young. And it was like a little bit of a mix. It wasn't Sanda specifically. Okay. They did sort of a mix of kickboxing, but Sanda is essentially like kung fu kickboxing. Right. It's like Chinese martial arts style of kickboxing for folks that don't know. And so a lot of the techniques, a lot of the training comes from your traditional stuff if you understand it, like if you actually know how to apply it. So I started doing it really, really soon on because for me and like the way that it was sort of taught to me from my coach was like, okay, like you can do the movements, but if you don't understand the pressure of being in a fight, if you don't understand how to move with someone and just very basic defensive and offensive tactics, then the movements aren't going to do you any good. Right. So you have to start doing the kickboxing if you want to better understand what you're doing traditionally.
Do you think maybe that's one negative with a lot of traditional schools that they don't really apply what they train in that way?
Oh, of course. Yeah, and this is like a big debate that
we've talked about it a million times.
Yeah, years and years is like there's a lot to traditional martial arts, and like I'll say specifically Chinese martial arts. Like there's other traditional styles that I think probably have similar issues in that like you have so much that you're trying to learn, and there's a lot that's been put into it, generation after generation after generation of information that's been gathered, and you're trying to learn it all, and it starts to boil down a little bit too much to just movement and like putting your body into a certain shape and looking a certain way and getting really low for flexibility and power. but there's not a lot of pressure testing done right away, at least in a lot of traditional kung fu. So there's a lot of schools and there's a lot of lineages. I'm not to like go again down the rabbit hole specifically, but like there's a lot of traditional kung fu that is a lot of bark and no bite, and it ends up giving like kung fu or traditional Chinese martial arts a bit of a bad name. Because you have a lot of guys that have a rank or a belt or whatever they want to say they have, and they have schools and their teachers have schools or whatever. And they can't actually fight. Someone that's done any kind of combat sport for any amount of time that they've been able to get their sort of foothold into the style is going to be able to go against someone that's done traditional martial arts maybe even for years
with no pressure testing.
With no pressure testing, and just mollywop them because they just don't know.
I've seen it.
They don't know how to.
I haven't heard mollywop.
Mollywop. That was a good word. How would you compare Sanda to other kickboxing styles? Because I really want to get into Sanda because that's one of the main things that you're promoting now and teaching here. The gym's called Sanda Fighting Arts. And I've been training Sanda with you for a while, along with other styles. And so how would you compare Sanda or Sancho to other kickboxing styles?
So Sanda is... It's a kickboxing style that incorporates striking and kicking as well as knees. In some promotions, you can do elbows. So it's somewhat similar to Muay Thai in that way. But there's a big emphasis on wrestling. So you can sweep someone's leg. You can catch someone's leg from a kick and sweep them out in like a billion different ways. There's like some angles and some ways you can't do it in other kickboxing styles. Or like in K1, you can't really do like a leg reap or a sweep or something like that. But you can also just shoot in and clinch or grab somebody or shoot in for their legs. You can shoot in for a double leg or a single leg, pick somebody straight up off the canvas and throw them down. And that makes it very different from a lot of like straight kickboxing styles. It's a little bit closer to like MMA in that sense.
Definitely.
Because you have to worry about that element of wrestling. You have to worry about someone shooting in and trying to take you down. A little bit different in that you have to try to stay on your feet. You can't like go to the ground. You don't fight on the ground. So even when you shoot in, you try not to like drop your knee down to the ground or anything like that. But you have to stay a little bit lower and a little bit more rooted or like connected to the ground because of that element, so that if someone tries to shoot in on you, you can defend it and you can stay on your feet and you can still generate power. Between that and like stylistically or like in terms of rule sets, it's very fast. They want you to have engagement in a match, like if you're competing, at least every 5 seconds. So you can't spend too long like feeling an opponent out and like trying to like strategize.
Oh, really? See, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, you have to. So like if you have like quote unquote dead air, like nothing's happening for 5 seconds, the head ref is going to tell you like you have to engage, and if there's another 5 seconds, they'll actually dock you points for not engaging. They want you to have like a really fast and exciting match, basically, so they almost force it. Then the other thing that's a little different, if you're trying to compare it to like Muay Thai, is within that like clinch work, when you're wrestling, you only have 5 seconds to try to execute something. Whereas in like, if you know Muay Thai rules, like you could clinch and like fight for a longer time, and kind of swim there and like do whatever you want, like in fighting. They want you to, again, like within 5 seconds of having that clinch, they want something to happen. So you have to constantly try to like get that takedown really fast. You can't wait. So in general, I always say it's like Muay Thai with judo.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that's a good description for people that don't know. And also, I think if you want to get into MMA, Sanda might be a style to look into because you have the takedowns, and is where other kickboxing styles, you're more limited, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's I always think it's a good bridge, right? Especially if you're trying to get into MMA, and of course that's like kind of our sell here. If like that's what you're getting into. Because you don't need to get like, all right, you take a Muay Thai class, then you take a wrestling class, and you have to figure out how to bridge those two. The style itself is sort of developed to have both of them in there, the wrestling component and the striking component. So it's a really good package in terms of the training. Like I said, it doesn't have any groundwork, so that's like the one place where I feel like it's obviously lacking. If you're like really trying to get into MMA, you have to have at least some base, having some kind of like ground control and ground game. So. But it's a good bridge for MMA. Like I said, it's covers a lot more ground. It's a very dynamic style.
Yeah, definitely. And so some of the other styles that you actually teach, Chinna, which I've done a little bit with you, Shuai Jiao and the Mongolian folk wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Why don't you get into those a little bit as well? Tell the people.
Sure. So Chinna means to seize and control. So it's joint locking. I tried it, like the easiest way to explain that is it's like standing BJJ. So if you know what you're trying to do in BJJ when you're trying to like lock somebody's joint, it's the same thing, but you're standing. The emphasis is on trying to stay on the ground and or stay off the ground and try to control your opponent. So you're seizing, you're grabbing them, and then control, trying to like lock them and move their body. But you can attack all the joints. So there's fingers and there's wrists, elbows, shoulders, whatever. Same thing, neck and spine, and you can choke. You can try to essentially submit somebody standing or bring them into the ground with one of those locks. There's not like a competition style for this because you can hurt your fingers and wrists really easily, even like in BJJ, right? There's like some rule sets around like small joint attacks or like when you can do certain things to like the ankles or the knees and stuff like that, whereas Chin-Na doesn't have anything like that. And it's extremely difficult. It's really, really difficult to do. And it's a main component to any like full Chinese martial arts. Like there's four categories, they say, in Chinese martial arts: Ti, Da, Na, and Shuai. Ti is kicking or using your legs. Da is striking. That's where the Da comes from in Sanda. San means to randomly, and Da means to strike. It's like free fighting. Shuai is wrestling, which I'll talk about. And then Na is that control, is that locking, joint locking. And because Sanda doesn't really have the joint locks and Shuai Jiao doesn't really have the joint locks, it's like it can also be taught just as its own thing, but it's a very difficult thing to get into practice. But kind of what I was saying earlier, that's actually the thing that originally got me interested in training at YMAA and with Dr. Yang Jingming, is because his Chin-Na, his joint locking is really, really well known. He's probably one of the, if not the most
leading
known and leading Chin-Na practitioner and teacher. So that's what I originally got into here, and I have like a instructor certification specifically for Chin-Na. Like that's my specialty.
He's very good at it.
That school.
He'll definitely bend your fingers and, and arms in ways that don't feel good.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, now I know you've gotten into BJJ, which is obviously a submission grappling style. Have you been able to apply some of your Chin-Na to BJJ?
Oh yeah, for sure. I like to experiment and I like to play. So like, I like getting folks in that have other backgrounds and sort of seeing how styles mesh and stuff like that. And I'm training BJJ myself now.
Right.
I'm not good at it by any means. It's definitely not where I feel comfortable because it's just not what I've trained. But the concepts are really the same. Like the way that a joint locks or how you can manipulate a body is only so many variations on, right? Like a joint only moves so many ways and it locks in so many ways and it controls the body in so many ways. So whether it's I'm learning BJJ, I go like, oh, that's this Chin-Na or that's this Chin-Na. It's just on the ground. And then when I'm rolling and I'm like working with somebody, I see if I can get into any of the things that I know naturally, even if it's not something I've done in BJJ, I start seeing a lot of opportunities for like wrist locks or stuff. Again, fingers you can't do, but that ends up, the part of it is like that you try to avoid some of the finger locks because they like think of it as like too easy. It's like, well, if you can't get something else, you just grab the fingers and start moving that, and that kind of loosens up a grip, and then that opens up to other things. But I love it, and I like trying to apply it. It's just, I mean, the reason I really got into Chin-Na is because it's aggressive as hell, and like it's just busting people up, and that was
breaking bones.
Breaking bones. That's awesome, and like BJJ is very similar. It's just a different take, so there's a lot of crossover in that for me.
Cool, man. That's good that you are able to apply those, because maybe inquiring minds might say, well, yeah, you're doing these stand-in joint locks, and can you pull them off in a grappling on the ground setting? And obviously, you found that you can.
Oh yeah, for sure. Hey, like I said, there's a lot of crossover, and the names might be different, but a lot of the locks are the same. Again, like there's only so many ways the body moves and doesn't move. So there's bound to be crossovers, and people love to be like, that's a BJJ move, not a blah blah blah. It's all the same. Like, it can be both. It
same
can be
rules.
things, right? People are going to fight and figure out what works and what doesn't, and then that's what's going to become part of their style. But yeah, I really like doing the Chin-Na with the BJJ because I think it works. But Chin-Na is a tough thing to teach, and it's an even tougher thing to really do and apply. A lot of people might do it, again, kind of going into the like back to the Kung Fu or a lot of Chinese martial arts. They don't really pressure test their stuff. They go through the techniques and they show like, oh, here's how the lock would work. But then people are like, well, yeah, but it wouldn't work against someone that would do X, Y, and Z. Like you can always debunk stuff like that because they don't have, and they don't have any way to back it up. So you have to really know the training and really know how it's applied if you're gonna like cross those two things in those two worlds.
Yeah, I agree. And in the past, for me, I've done, I guess you would call it small circle jiu-jitsu style training with the standing joint locks, but you just do like what you call flow drills, where you grab someone's arm and you just do each lock and they go with it, and you're not really getting that pressure testing. But from training with Tye, he has a different approach, which I like. It's a little bit more realistic to pull off those locks.
Yeah, I try to, like, one of my goals, one of the reasons I even opened this gym is to try to kind of change Chinese martial arts a little bit, at least in the approach, in terms of how people see it and how they learn it, to make it a little bit more direct and a little bit more realistic. So you got to take some of the, I don't know, fluff out of it a little bit and talk about it more in situation, not just like, here's the move, here's how you put your body. Yeah. You have to talk about when and how and why you would use it, and actually know that stuff, and have some sort of system where you can kind of flow, almost like in BJJ they say you roll, right? You actually apply it, you kind of go back and forth. It's like sparring. You have to be able to do that a little bit. It's tricky. You have to like condition the body and have good control, because you can hurt somebody.
Right.
So
definitely.
like in China, a lot of times they don't do that, and that's why it sucks.
Yeah.
So I try really hard to bridge those gaps from like theory and application in any of the Chinese martial arts stuff.
Yeah, man. Why don't you talk a little bit about the Shuai Jiao and the Mongolian wrestling?
So Shuai Jiao is Chinese jacketed wrestling. So it's our wrestling style for like a combat sport. So like you wear a jacket like you would in judo or in jiu-jitsu, what they call like a gi. The jacket is a little different though. So it's a little more like open chested and it's short sleeved. And the idea in Shuai Jiao is you use that jacket to get a grip, and there's like a better grip that you want to try to have to control or move that person, push and pull them or set it up, and then try to take them down. But again, the emphasis is on you staying on your feet and you throwing them to the ground. You don't want to go down. And there's like a point system, like how clean the throw is, very similar to judo.
Yeah.
So if you stay up and you flip them all the way and they hit the ground, that's how you're going to get the most amount of points. If you like trip them up and they like drop down and put their knee or their hand on the ground, you'll get like maybe 2 points. And if you do a technique where you're falling with them and kind of land on them, you're only going to get 1 point, because they want to see that you're up on the ground. And a lot of that stuff, like the rule sets and how they develop that, is essentially, it's trying to mimic like war times, right? So like if you're on the battlefield, so to speak, and someone grabs onto your armor, you're trying to learn how to like break their grip off their armor, grab their armor, throw them on the ground to like slit their throat, and then keep fighting. So you don't want to be on the ground. That's like their mentality.
You're gonna stay up just because if you're in battle, like you were saying, you're gonna boom, he's done now. Keep playing.
Yeah, exactly. But they make it into like a sport. So it's like
in modern times, we're not out on the battlefields in hand-to-hand combat as much.
Right.
So
the jacket component is, I think, the thing that makes it interesting. Is it adds like a level of awareness and sensitivity to the wrestling, because like if you try to throw someone or take somebody down and they're holding on to you with a tight grip on that jacket, it's hard to control. Like it's hard to get them down. Whereas if they're like just kind of squeezing your arm or like hooking around the back of your neck or something, it's a little easier to have them disconnect. So the way that they explain it is like you have to be more skillful to defend against having a jacket on, and be like a little bit quicker and more aware, and how to utilize those grips on the jacket than if it was just like no gi or no jacketed wrestling.
Right, but it also applies to no gi.
Yeah, absolutely. And they even have competitions where you do it without the jacket and different like Chinese wrestling styles. But it's the idea is like anything that you can do with the jacket, you should be able to apply without.
Right.
And just kind of figure out with like an underhook or an overhook or something like that, how to move them and get their weight in the right place, how to put something in the way and sweep or hook.
That would even be good for applying that to like bouncing and shit.
Oh yeah,
when you're pushing people out there, grabbing your jacket, same thing, then you can deflect it. And
that
would be actually
Shuai Jiao.
It's not as violent per se, where you're not beating somebody in the fucking head. You know what I mean?
It would be great. I mean, obviously right now everything's closed, but I mean these styles are definitely would be beneficial for anyone in that field.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And coming from that field, and you too.
I see. I've been in it. It's like I fucking grab this fucking, then you're down because they're pulling you down. At least if I can break it, then you're thrown down. Then you can,
absolutely.
That actually
it makes it a lot easier to move people.
And I can avoid lawsuits, so I'm not cracking somebody.
Well, that's the thing. You can't really throw punches anymore, so it's like you got to find other ways to defend yourself.
Yeah.
How does the Mongolian wrestling tie into it all?
So the Mongolian wrestling is something that we've been doing more recently.
And what's the actual traditional name for it?
Bokh.
Okay, I didn't say it because I wanted to make sure I was saying it right.
Yeah, Bokh. So we do Inner Mongolian Bokh, or Inner Mongolian wrestling. or we're learning it and applying it. It's the way that I kind of see it is it's like the mother style for a lot of these Chinese wrestling styles.
Okay.
It's a very high level wrestling art. It's a very high level of sensitivity and control. The jacket, it's another jacketed style. The jacket is different. It's a lot thicker. It's like thick leather, and it's like kind of like just the sleeve portion, the chest and the stomach is open, and then it has a back, and like the back of it is straight across, like across the shoulders, so that you can like hook and grab onto it, and then it comes down, and there's like a thick belt or like waistband that wraps, and then there's like metal, usually like a metal emblem on the back, and like metal studs around it for like impact. But it's a much harder jacket to grab onto. Like you need to have fucking hands of steel to be able to hold on to that thing and move someone around. So they get really, really good at like getting those grips and learning how to control someone. And then the things that make the Inner Mongolian style sort of unique, the first thing that everybody kind of notices is there's no weight class, there's no weight limit on anything. So again, it's supposed to sort of mimic the old warriors sort of mentality where if you roll up on that battlefield and someone's 200 pounds heavier than you, you don't get to say, no, not you. We're not in the right weight class, right? And you got to find somebody else. So like, regardless of like who you're matched up with, you have to wrestle. You just go. There's also no time limit. So if it takes you half an hour to throw somebody, it takes you half an hour to throw somebody or longer. So there's no weight class, there's no time limit, there's no like age limit to like when you can go. Once you feel like you can wrestle, you wrestle, and you wrestle as long as you can. And there's also no like boundary, so there's no like ring or mat or anything like that. They mostly compete outside. Again, like if there's rocks or horse shit or whatever on the ground on the battlefield, you don't get to be like, oh, can we fight? Can we kill each other over here? It's like more comfortable. You just, wherever you're at is where you go. And then there's only like a single point. So once you throw someone, that's it. There's no second round. You don't get up. You can't continue to wrestle. Once you're down, like again, theoretically, it's like you've been thrown down to the ground. They slit your throat. You're now down and out. You're out of the war. So you just go to the next person. So you only get 1 point, one chance. There's no second round.
Once you hit the ground, it's over.
Once you hit the ground, it's over. And nothing can touch the ground from your ankle up. If your knee hits, if your hand hits, if your shoulder, your back, your butt, anything, if you hit the ground, you're out. So it's like the stakes are really high. Yeah. You can't like put yourself out there, get tossed, and get back up and be like, it's okay, I'll get him in the next one, or I'll get him on the next round. You have to be like really, really careful and really high level. That's what makes it really, again, like the jacket's really difficult, and the rule sets make it really difficult. So you have to be like really good. And then when you do like the Chinese wrestling with the wrestling jacket that's softer and bigger, it's like, oh, this is way easier, right? Like, and you've got someone that's like your size, and it's a lot easier. Yeah. So it's a really unknown style. Like, there's no schools for it. It's not something that's really come out of that area of the world until now. Like, we're trying to do it. My coach is Lavelle Marshall is out there. He moved out there. He's like a 5-time U.S. Shuai Jiao champion, an international champion in Chinese wrestling. And then he was like, all right, I beat everybody here. I'm going to China. He's like, I'm moving to China. I got to go like really train with the top. And then found this Bokh, the Inner Mongolian style, and was like, oh, all these guys win all the Chinese wrestling competitions. Like, all the champions are all Mongolian. So he ended up going out into Inner Mongolia and learning this style, and then he's been
he's really good
teaching it back to me, and I've been trying to like spread that, and we do like online seminars and stuff with them once a month.
I've had the privilege of training with him via the internet when he's come through Zoom during class, and he's definitely a top-notch practitioner. And I think it's really cool, man. I've talked to Ty about this, that when you're training the Mongolian stuff, you're literally training, maybe not exactly the same, but you're training stuff that Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire, the warriors of the Mongol Empire were doing fucking, a long time ago. It's cool shit.
That's how they conquered most of the world. I mean, it was an effective system.
Yeah, so man. And you've actually traveled to Mongolia, right? You've been?
I have.
In China.
In China, yeah. So when I was younger, when I was like in my teens, I flew to China, not specifically to train. Like, I ended up going to China just to better understand like the culture and history of like the stuff that I was training. I didn't go to like a specific training facility. So I kind of went all over. I flew into Beijing, and I kind of like bumped around to a couple different places. I had like some host families that I could stay with, and I trained at a couple of different spots. And at the time, I didn't know anything about Mongolian wrestling, but I did end up making it out to Inner Mongolia in Huhat and Baotou and a couple other places. And I made it out to like this horse farm out in the grasslands where they all like stayed in yurts.
Steppe.
Yeah, and like they wrestled every day, all day. Like that's all they do. And like that's a huge part of their culture, which is why they get so good at wrestling, is like from the day you can walk, you're wrestling. And it's just something that's integrated into their culture. Everybody's taught. Yeah. And they may not say that they're wrestlers. Like you could ask someone that's wrestled for 25 years, be like, oh, are you a wrestler? And they'll say no, unless they're like professional at it. Yeah. But they all, like, it's just a part of the culture. Like it's stuff that I'm learning now. But like I made it out there, and I remember I put on the jacket and everything, the Mongolian wrestling jacket, and I tried to wrestle with some of them, and like I was young, and they kind of like they were just messing with me, right?
Yeah.
They'd try to take me down, and I'd have I had a little balance, I had some good coordination, I'd been training for a while, and like I wouldn't go down, and they'd all go, "Oh, that's amazing!" Right? And then I'd try to take them down, I'd get like a little tricky, and the second I tried to get tricky, I was upside down, flipped 3 times over, hit the ground, I'm staring at the sky, and like birds are flying around my head.
At that point,
I think I was 16 when I went out.
Wow, you got a proper education in Mongolian folk wrestling for sure.
And again, like I didn't realize at the time, like I was a fucking 16-year-old that just like managed to just dumb luck end up getting out there and like finding the people that did it. And I didn't think, I was like, well, if I can get out here, everybody must know what this shit is. And they don't. Like it's really actually pretty rare. And I wish I had like paid more attention, and like I took it for granted a little bit because
fucking 16.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was like, well, this isn't kung fu, so it's not what I want. Like I was like so into kung fu, and I was like, well, I don't wrestle. I don't know what this is. It's not kung fu, so I didn't take it, the way I should have. But now I wish I had spent more time.
How did you find the kung fu training in China?
Like how did I find people to train with?
How did you find the experience?
It was meh. It was kind of whatever when I was there, just because there's a lot of what's called like wushu. Like the contemporary wushu is like when you see like they run across the floor and jump and flip and kick 3 times in the air, do a backflip, land in a split.
What you see in the movies.
Yeah, it's more for show. It's like gymnastics essentially, but with like martial arts movements. There's not a lot of application, and I was always an applications guy. Like that's what I really liked. But that's what's most common as like a sport, is like a performance art kind of. Mm-hmm. And so when you tell someone, oh, I'm from America, I do kung fu, they bring you to a wushu gym, and they like, okay, let's see your backflip. And it's like, well, I don't backflip, and like that's it. Actually, the one time I got like some really good, cool training in China is I was practicing in a park one morning, and there was a little kid in like, I don't know, like the 8th floor of this building that was like screaming his head off at me in Chinese, and I didn't understand him at the time, and he was just like screaming, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden he stopped. I was like, okay, like that was weird, like early in the morning. Then all of a sudden I see him digging himself under this fence, and he comes running at me. Really? A little kid, he's maybe like 7 or 8, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he was like, he starts yelling at me, and he starts like doing some kung fu moves. I was like, oh, okay, you do a little kung fu, and I started doing this, and then like more people and kids started like getting like coming around me and like circling me. I was like, this is kind of interesting, and they like grabbed me and like started leading me back behind this building. I was like, am I gonna get mugged? Like, am I about to die in like some random like town in China? Like I was all by myself. How I managed to get out there at 16 on my own is
that's a pretty amazing story right there.
Yeah, people don't do that. These days you're not gonna let your teenage kid go out, but at that time, it was what I did. And
that's what everyone should do. Go on a fucking journey like that.
Yeah, you're 16, you go. Or like, what was it, the Spartans at 14?
Yes.
Kick your kids out into the woods, and they had to survive. And if they didn't, that was it. And if they did, they could come back. But I survived. I got out there, and they brought me back to this building, and there was another group of kids pulling like this little old man to this like courtyard, and then there was like one kid that could translate. He's like, oh, he's a old kung fu master.
Really?
And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, and I was trying to say, I was like working on my Chinese, like, oh, I do kung fu, and he started like doing some stuff, and I would like mimic him and be like, oh yeah, you do kung fu, and it was like good traditional kung fu too, and actually it was the China, like he like grab my wrist and he'd kind of point at it and be like, and I'd be like, huh, and he'd be like, and he like hold my wrist and kind of pull me a little bit, and so I would do a China. And his eyes would get big, and he'd go, oh, yeah, that's good. And then he'd grab my elbow or my shoulder or something, and I would do another one, and he was like really, really impressed. And then he started grabbing like my pocket and like pulling me, and I didn't know how to do anything. He's like, I see you're bad. You only get to do it if it's like your wrist or your elbow. And like honestly, like I ended up doing that for like probably 45 minutes, just training with this guy. He started like putting me in the stances, and like I don't know what his name was or anything like that. It was just like the local. Yeah, it was just like the local. Yeah, I trained for like 45 minutes, and then I looked up. He gave me the thumbs up, turned into mist.
The puff of smoke.
Dude,
like,
you know what? I've never heard that story, but that's something out of a movie right there, bro.
Shit.
Yeah, really.
That's cool. I didn't even know that, man.
There was some 7-year-old that found you at the 8th floors up yelling at you.
Dude, that's crazy.
Literally,
like,
I was just like training early morning. The kid was yelling at me, and then like I guess he was the kid
Like
that was translating was a little bit older. Like he was like, yeah, he's like the local master. Like he did kung fu when he was younger, and so he just like started showing me stuff, and that was like the best experience that I had actually training.
That's real too. It was unexpected.
That's the universe at work telling you, you know, come to this direction, and you can't pay for stuff like that.
No. Yeah, learning in the back of a building in an alley was better than like again, like every time I was like, oh, I'm looking for a kung fu school, they'd bring me in and I didn't really even get to train. I got to do a little bit, but they'd like demonstrate, but not like I wouldn't really like take a class. They would like want a demo for me and then like have me do a couple things.
Gotcha.
But like they didn't really want me like training there.
Well, they're like you know, sometimes sketchy about the Chinese are sketchy about sharing secrets with outsiders, right?
Yeah, it's foreigners are welcomed, but you know it's
probably because it's part of their culture, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, like to jump into a class, and like I get it, I can respect that.
Yeah.
I mean that's how it was back in the day, anyways, right? Like good traditional kung fu, you wouldn't just teach to anybody.
Yeah.
That's why like the training is sometimes the way it is. Like you got to do a horse stance, mabu for 6 months before you learn anything to show that you're dedicated and that you have good morality and all this stuff. So. Like it's still part of the culture. It's still ingrained in that community.
Well, that's why Bruce Lee caught a lot of flack, because he was one of the first people to teach. I don't know if you call it kung fu exactly, but to teach martial arts. Well, yeah, Wing Chun, I guess.
Like opening it up to the West.
Right, to open it up to the West, to Americans and other people. He didn't discriminate. He taught it to everybody. And then the traditional masters here, or maybe probably over in China too, weren't too happy about that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're not that far from that stuff. Like, we're a generation, like my teachers, even Dr. Young, like he talked about like when he first started teaching some of this stuff, he would get like death threats and things. People would, send him letters like, how dare you share this information, and like how dare you give people the secrets to our culture and stuff like that. But the big thing about that, and I think what like Bruce Lee, probably one of the best, if not the best thing that came out of like kind of his movement, so to speak, is like people realizing like if you don't share it, it's gonna go away.
It's gonna die.
And like a lot of people, I think that, and like some of the old masters, so to speak, that like said like, oh, you shouldn't be teaching this to foreigners, you shouldn't be teaching this to Westerners or whatever, and later on ended up being like, well, actually, it's about to die out. Like real good traditional Chinese martial arts is about to die out because people aren't doing it anymore, and people don't really know. And like the stuff that's getting passed on is kind of shit. The stuff that's really good is hard, and then people aren't learning it, taking the time. So you have to kind of change how it's like you have to be more willing to give it away. Like if somebody wants to, like back in the day, I get it. Like it was the secrets. If it was your clan versus my clan, or your banner, or your whatever, your town versus my town, and there's only so much resource or land or whatever it is, and we're gonna fight. If I have something that's gonna win that fight, that war, I'm gonna keep it to myself and to my people so that we can fight and kill you, right? And then whoever had the better stuff, they survived.
It would be bad if they shared it, because then they'll learn your style.
The enemy learns.
Exactly. That was the thing. So some of the like kind of high level skills that they talk about or whatever might have been the difference between winning and losing, and you kind of kept that secret and you wanted to make sure that like you had it. But nowadays, like if someone wants to go and fuck someone up, they go and get a gun. Like, so what does it really matter if you're teaching someone
old school shit?
Yeah, and like if you're not like okay, I don't want to spar because I don't want to show these techniques. Well, that's stupid. Everybody's fighting and sparring now. Like if you're not doing
worldwide,
you're just going to end up washing away.
It's different time now.
Way different.
Absolutely, and like. Yeah, you're not running around with like spears and sabers and stuff like that. So like the secret techniques of those weapons is no longer like as important in terms of the survival of the people, right? It's more preservation now. So you have to be willing to save it if you want, or teach it if you want to save it.
Yeah.
You're staying on teaching. How did you get into teaching martial arts?
When I was young, when I was a teenager, I started helping. Like I was the assistant instructor, and
you started when you were 12. You were saying anything?
Yeah, and for kung fu and stuff like that. So I loved it. Like I really liked when I started teaching and helping out. Like there was something about getting people those skills and like kind of someone comes in that doesn't know something, right? And wants to better themselves, whether it's just get more in shape or just get more coordinated or healthy or learn how to fight or compete or whatever it is. And like helping someone in that process was like really rewarding for me, right? And I loved it just like right away. And the thing is, like, I'm not always the best teacher of things outside of martial arts. And I think for martial arts, I'm also not like naturally gifted by any means. Like, I really, really had to work to get any kind of skill or ability.
Well, you definitely got it now.
I appreciate that.
I can say that from personal experience.
I appreciate that. You know, it's not for lack of trying. So like, it was a struggle for me. So when I teach, I remember it being so difficult. And I can also remember as I started learning things, like someone would be like, well, how are you doing that? And me being like, well, shit, how am I doing that? Like, I trained it a lot until I could do it, but I don't actually I couldn't like verbalize or process exactly what it was. And by teaching, it made my martial arts better. And so that's really, really what got me into it. It's like, oh, when I start teaching this stuff,
you have to kind of break it down step by step, so then
that makes you know it better and kind of know.
It's easier for you to learn it yourself.
Exactly. Like I said, I don't learn things fast, so it took me time. Whereas like things that I might be a little bit better at, I don't teach as well because I don't know the process. And like if someone picks it up, that's fine. I can teach them quick. But if they don't, I can go, don't worry, I can relate. I had the same issue. And like I can work them through it. And so like that's what ends up like I put a lot into how I teach. Like coaching is probably next to my own training is like the number one thing I focus on. And just being a good coach and being able to help someone like gain the skill and gain the knowledge.
You're definitely good. You have the patience and everything. And I've noticed throughout my time training, there's some guys or people, I should say, that are really good martial artists. You know, they have a lot of skill, but they might not be the best teachers because they maybe lack patience. 100%. They're all over the place. But I know I can say for you that you're definitely on point and you're good at showing the techniques and whatever you're teaching.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Nah, man, you know, it's real. Because I've, you know, not to name names, but I've train with people and it's like all over the place and you're like it's hard to pick stuff up that way, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Like being one of the best martial artists doesn't necessarily make you the best teacher.
Exactly.
And you know, I always say like, I watch Rocky, look at Mickey wasn't going to be in the ring anytime soon, but he's going to corner for you and tell you how to be a champion. You know what I mean? Like
Customato wasn't going to fight him.
Yeah, no, I mean he's an old man. You know.
So yeah, like that's a whole skill set in itself. Being able to teach and like transmit that information, it's a whole different skill set than just doing.
I agree with you.
You need a little of both, I think.
I agree. And now you've competed quite a bit in both traditional and you've done some Sanda fights as well, right?
Yes. So I've always kind of competed in both. So like in traditional martial arts competition, there's like forms or sequences where you're just like doing the movements and they're like judging you on how clean and quick the movements are and how balanced you are. But it's just form, it's just sequence. And they do the same thing for weapons training and stuff like that. And then there's skills testing. So they have sparring or Sanda and then wrestling, both Shuai Jiao with the jacket or without. And I always did both. Not every competition does that. Some competitions are just form, and then like some are just fighting skills. So I like to compete, and I hope to continue to compete. I've got some goals. You're gonna see 2021.
I know.
Making some moves.
I know what you're doing. I don't know if you want to speak on it, but I know what Ty got going on, and it's definitely no joke, man.
Yeah, we got some stuff going on. We're not quite ready to announce it yet. But
just trust me. It's a lot of people are gonna be like, wow.
Yeah,
you know,
we're working on some stuff.
Man.
For Chinese martial arts, like for Sanda, there's not a lot of competition in the U.S.
Yeah,
that's like the biggest
speak on that a little bit.
So I mean, there used to be like in the 90s and 2000s, it looked like it was going to pop off. Like Sanda, or at the time they were calling it Sanshou. It's the same thing,
right.
Just a little different translation,
different dialect.
So Sanshou it's like random hands, and like Sanda means to randomly strike. So it's just like it's the same thing, a little bit of a different translation. Some people have other thoughts on it, but that's the truth.
You heard it first.
Like I've always had to travel to compete, and a lot of times it's pay to play. Like you have to pay your own entry fees and registration, and you have to pay your own travel and everything like that. You're not getting money if you win.
Not glamorous.
Yeah, it's you know, and you're fighting in gymnasiums, or you're fighting in like the ballroom at like a sort of cheap hotel or whatever.
Like hardcore shows.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like hardcore shows. You pay to get fucking sweaty and beat up, and then that's it. You go home and hopefully you got something out of it. But and there's just like, there's not like a good pro league or here or anything. So everything's amateur level. And you don't, like, most of the times you don't know who you're going to fight. You just go, you weigh in, you show up, and then they match you up right there. It's like smokers. And it's a lot of times for Sanda traditionally is bracketed. So you might fight 2 or 3 guys in the weekend or even in the day, depending on how it goes. But I've always done it. So I fought in Chicago. I fought in St. Louis. I fought in San Jose. I fought in Texas. I fought in New Orleans. I fought in Florida. I fought kind of all over, and I've competed, and I've done really well. So like probably from 2013, 2014, that's probably when I was competing the most. I got a couple of grand champion titles. I got
they're right here.
3 grand champion titles with ICMAC, and then I started competing again last year in 2019, or maybe it was 2018. I can't remember. Time's flying.
A couple years ago.
It was a couple years ago. I started competing. My last fight, I think, was in New Orleans, and then they ICMAC opened up the New England Championship again, and I competed in four events, got 4 golds, and got another grand champion title for Chinese martial arts. But it's you know, like I said, like it's a small community. There's not a lot of Chinese martial arts, so you have to travel if you want, and if you really want to get good competition. Like, it's cool that I win, it's cool that I do well, but like I always want more. I always want a higher level of competition. I don't want to be like the biggest fish in a small pond. I want to be the biggest fish in the biggest pond. You know what I mean? So, and like if you want to do it in Sanda or Shuai Jiao, you have to travel, and not just travel within the U.S. You got to go international. Like, that's really what it comes to.
Well, you've told me that there's bigger Sanda promotions and scenes in other parts of the world.
Oh yeah, and like at an international level for like international Sanda, you see like every country has a team, and like we have a team. The U.S. has a team. Our team's not very good, but we have one, and you always see like China obviously has a really strong team. Russia has a really strong team. Iran has a really strong team. Egypt has a really strong team. Lebanon, like there's a couple of like big players that always have really good competitors, but it's a little bit closed off because like that's really all they compete in. Although you're starting to see more guys with like a Sanda background starting to get into MMA and stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I was going to bring that up.
It's starting to break out. So.
A couple UFC champs, right?
Yep. There's Muslim Salikov and Zabit. Like those are a couple of like kind of big names that are coming up in the UFC. Zhang Weili is the current strawweight champion right now, and she does great. She has like a traditional background as well as like Sanda and Shuai Jiao background. She does like the traditional stuff and supports the traditional stuff still. So like it's starting to branch out a little bit. If you're really looking to just compete in Sanda, you're going to have to travel to some of the competitions that happen. There's a few that still happen in the U.S. or I mean, not this year, obviously.
Right.
Hopefully they're going to come back.
Yeah.
And there's a couple other things that I'm kind of working on. I'm trying to bring that scene back a little bit myself. And then there's like some international stuff that you can get. Otherwise, like if you do Sanda, you can compete in like international rules or K1 rules.
Kickboxing.
And like it would apply to Muay Thai. It's just you're probably not going to be the strongest if you're not comfortable with those rule sets. So you'd have to adapt it, but you could do it. And like I'd be happy to do it.
Yeah.
Or try an MMA. Like I think if you have a couple more skill sets under your belt, like we talked about earlier, it's a really good style if you're trying to make that transition.
Yeah. Well, speaking as someone who's also trains Muay Thai, I find that I don't think Sanda is, it's definitely a different style, some of the kicks and stuff like that, if you really want to break it down. But I think you could adapt, if you were a Sanda guy and you wanted to do Muay Thai competitions, I think it wouldn't be too hard.
No. I think it can, I definitely think it can be done. And in fact, I think we're going to do it. Like that's my big idea with this gym is like, the biggest thing is like, you need to have a good facility and you need to have good fighters. Like you need to be able to train and develop, and there's not a lot of Sanda gyms that are doing that right now, in the US at least. And a lot of the like international stand-up, everyone's like, well, why don't you see more this, that, or the other? In MMA, it's like they tend to stay because they have a big stand-up community and competition, and it can be lucrative. So why would they start branching out? But if it's here, you kind of have to. So you need facilities. You need good coaches. You need people actually training for combat sport, not just like, okay, we do a little kung fu and we do a little sanda on the side to have fun and spar.
Right.
Like you need to take it seriously. Yeah. So we're trying to provide like an outlet for people to do that and kind of pass on some of that information and some of the like sanda style at that level. So we're trying to make moves. That's what we're doing.
You're definitely on course to do that, for sure.
We're working on it. We'll see. You know, we just got going. We just started.
Now you started doing the Sanda Fighting Arts program. You were teaching other schools and other gyms.
Yeah. So I started SFA as a program at a community center in West Roxbury. That's where it actually started. I was like the athletic assistant director, and I was running like a sanda program and some self-defense stuff and like a kids youth boxing and stuff like that out of this community center. So that's where like the program started. But when I moved around a bit, I was in Philly, I was in Vermont, I was in Chicago. When I moved back here to Boston, I moved here to start teaching at YMAA in Boston because it was originally the headquarters school. Then the headquarters moved to California. It was where I started training with Dr. Young.
The retreat center.
At the retreat center directly. I moved back here, so I was teaching the traditional stuff at YMAA, and then doing all of my programs at this community center. That's where we started. That's actually where I met you.
Yep. Orenberger, right?
The Orenberger, yep. Shout out to the O.
Some good classes over there, some good sparring sessions.
Yeah, we turned like a little back room. We cleaned it up, put some mats down, and we threw hands, man.
Yeah,
we had some fun there.
Yeah.
So that program grew, and then I ended up becoming the full-time adult program director at Young's Martial Arts Association. And like part of that, like going there full-time was that I could bring the sanda program and try to develop it there. And so about 3 years ago, we moved to Roslindale, where YMAA had moved to. They had moved locations and grew a little bit bigger. And we started developing the program there, and it grew a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And so we started like really trying to push our social media and stuff like that, and like show that there was a program doing sanda that had like a good traditional root to it. And that's what kind of like started the idea of opening this gym. And then we started looking for spaces and stuff like that. And we looked for a solid 3 years before we even found this location. Like I've been trying to push for this for a long time. And the idea started even before that. Like it started 6 years ago when we first started that program in the community center, and it grew, and we tried to like grow it bigger and bigger. We always talked about having a gym, but we only seriously started looking and like actually going to places to see if it would work. Probably in 2017. And then we ended up finding, I was just saying earlier, like...
Wow, it took you 3 fucking years.
Yeah, it took us 3 years to find a space that would work.
Yeah, I remember he was going through it, looking at different buildings and trying to get in somewhere and finding the right fit.
Yeah.
He definitely found it with this place.
Yeah, we're stoked. I mean, that was the thing, is like I didn't want to skimp on it. It's like everything that we found was either like crazy money if you're in like a certain part of Boston for very little space. Like, okay, well, we're not going to be able to grow here. It'd be like low ceilings, posts in the middle. That's like the biggest headache, is like every 8 feet there's a post. It's like you're not going to put a ring somewhere where you can't have open floor space. Or you're like way out in the sticks, or like in a big industrial park where nobody's going to go, like to get like kind of a warehouse. So like there was just nothing that had like enough of the boxes checked off of what we wanted out of a facility that was going to work. And I didn't want to just get something for the sake of getting something, until I found this space in Watertown. And I had seen the listing a couple of times, but it was like a bigger space. The wall, one of the walls here was actually not there. It was bigger, and it was like, well, that's too big for us. And then they decided to divide it up. But we've got like the high ceilings. There's no posts in the middle. We've got the garage door for like the airflow. We have this whole front, so we have like a front bathroom and desk and changing rooms and like an office. So it had like all of those boxes checked off. We were able to get a 20-foot ring, plenty of mat space, plenty of bags, and actually like get enough space and be able to put enough in here that it made sense to like, okay, yeah, it's worth going for this space. So we tried to jump on it right away. But
it was good they split it up.
Yeah, and like, again, I saw that listing for probably a year, And then I just was like, you know what? I looked at it a couple times. I'm going to check that listing one more time. And it was like they had just changed it to being what I can't remember what it was, like 9,000 square feet to this is about 4,500. And I was like, oh shit, they're changing it. And they had like mentioned that it would be good for a martial arts space. So we like called right away. This was actually last October. It was the first time I laid eyes on this space. We signed a lease last November, and it's been a year since we've actually signed the lease. It just took us forever for the build out to happen of the space and actually get in here. So that's like how we found the spot, and like we're super excited. Like I said, it's got most of the boxes checked off of everything we would want in a gym.
Yeah, it definitely came together. You guys did a great job of putting it together, and it looks great, and it's a great facility. Now, one thing you kind of already touched on, but I'm going to bring it back up. How do you feel that traditional martial arts and what you would call self-defense based martial arts compare to MMA and combat sports?
It's different, right? Like people are really opinionated on this, and I've got my opinions that I'll share, but like it can sometimes be so dividing. Like traditional martial arts are garbage. Like none of that can work. Or self-defense technique, people are always like, yeah, well, I would just do X, Y, and Z if this was a street fight.
Right.
They try to shit on MMA guys, and then MMA guys are like, MMA is the ultimate, and you can't beat any of me, try it, blah, blah, blah. And what it really comes down is to the practitioner in training, right?
Yeah.
So, like, if you do traditional stuff, if you're missing something out of training, like if you're not sparring, if you're not pressure testing it, then you're not going to use that stuff in a fight, whether it's in the street, whether you think because this is for street stuff. Like, if you don't have the feeling and understanding of, like, actual violence and somebody coming after you, then you're going to break down because your body is not used to dealing with like what's actually pressing you in like a stressful situation. It's not the gym. It's not on a mat. You don't have a compliant partner, right? You have to pressure test this stuff. And even there, like you can pressure test to the point where like you're so used to a closed off environment that you forget that like real world self-defense has some other elements as well.
True.
So you gotta train a little bit of that. Like what if they do pull something out, if they have a knife or a gun or something like that, or they've got a buddy, do you want to be on the ground like fighting for that Kimura if they've got a buddy that's stabbing you in the side while they're trying to get you off their friend? Like it can be different. It's not to say that stuff's not going to help you, but you kind of have to keep a little bit more of a wider idea about what you need to do and just be honest about what you're doing and what you can and can't do. Like it's totally fine to train just traditional stuff and just go over the movements because that might get you healthy, it might get you strong, it might help settle your brain. It certainly does for me, and like that's all fine and good. But if you want to know that the things you're practicing are actual fighting applications, you got to fight one way or another. However you do it, you got to fight, and you got to test it. You got to get tested against someone that doesn't want it to be done to them, and you have to actually apply it in some kind of controlled situation. MMA, whether any combat sport, I'll say, does that really well, right? You can get to that point relatively quickly. They keep things simple enough where people can learn the basics, pick it up, and then start testing it. And that's why I think they really excel in competition. And defense stuff is like a whole nother ballgame. Like it's a whole nother conversation.
The tactical, fucking
word,
fucking Navy SEAL.
Dude, they love when you put tactical on anything, you can sell it like that. Like this is my tactical water bottle. Oh, I'll pay $38 for that tactical water bottle. Like they
carbon fiber fucking top.
Yeah, dude.
Everyone's special ops. Everyone's coming from that world of special forces. And half the dudes probably never even been in the military.
Yeah, it's a weird, it's a weird subsect. It's a weird world in general, and like that stuff too. It's like you can do all this cool like knife disarm stuff, and there's a place for that. Like we teach some of that stuff.
Yeah, no,
like,
I've done it.
That'd be a good thing to learn too.
Well, it depends.
That's more real world for like it's street now.
Not all that stuff is what I would say realistic though. I mean, I'm sure Ty can back me up on that. We've talked about it before. I mean, I've trained a good amount of knife stuff, and some of it's I think good, and some of it is it's cool to learn, but you're not gonna pull that off in a knife fight. And someone's coming at you with a knife. Man. Like
so, this is it's a good topic. It's a really good example because the exact same thing applies to like Chinese martial arts and like what you're doing in like whether it's Chin-Na or your movements and your sequences or whatever, where there's a reason you might learn something a certain way. So like for knife defense stuff, for instance, there's all these like, okay, someone comes in and stabs you this way or that way. You intercept it, move them around, bend the wrist, push the blade this way. It pops out of their hand. You grab it. And that stuff looks great when you're demoing it. And it gets people excited. So that's the first thing is like there is a value in like you got to get people interested. But is that shit going to work when someone's like fucking stabbing you? No, that shit ain't gonna work. Like 90 fucking % of the shit that you see, that ain't gonna work. No. But there are general ideas in terms of like control and like how to try to secure something and like maneuver and try to keep yourself safe. But when you train somebody, you got to remember that not everybody is like this fucking stone cold killer ready to fucking get in there. Like sometimes you got to work somebody into that, right?
Absolutely.
So what I see is like with a lot of those like knife disarm, gun disarm stuff, what it does for like the layman's person in the beginning is it gets them comfortable with the idea that they may need to deal with that sort of thing. Yeah. So like, okay, there's a knife and like you use a training knife, like we've got metal ones, but they're not sharp and they're dull. But that way they have no give. They're not like rubber or anything. We've got some like harder plastic ones that you can kind of train with, but I've seen people, I have taught people where I pull something like that out. It's clearly a training knife. And they go white, bro. Like they start sweating, they get nervous, like because they think about what it would be if it was really a knife, and they freak out because they're just nervous. Yeah. And if you can't settle someone down with a training blade or anything like that, then in a real situation, they're fucked. Yeah. So like there's a value to training like that, but you have to be realistic about what it's doing for you. Yeah. It teaches you how to move around with something. And that's just the same way you might like, okay, someone's coming in with a big open hand push and you learn to grab their fingers and bend. Are you really going to do that in a self-defense situation? Is someone going to come and like push you in the shoulder or chest with a big open hand? Probably not. Yeah. Yeah. But it teaches you how to intercept, how to like make a connection and then find the feeling of grabbing and locking someone's fingers and the direction you need to bend. So you need to figure out how to like break down the training to understand the components and what it's actually doing for you, and then kind of go off in those different directions for what you really need to do. And so one of the things I always say is like, for stuff like that, whether it's like self-defense stuff or it's application for Chinese martial arts that you're going to use in Sanda or Shuai Jiao, you're better off training tactics over techniques. The techniques are cool. They look cool, I flip this around, lock you up, you're up on your toes, and I boom, bang your wrist, knife goes flying, and it looks great. It'll demo really good. It'll look great on YouTube. You get all sorts of likes and follows, right? The techniques are cool, but the tactics for what to do if somebody, for instance, has a knife or someone's trying to hit you or kick you or grab you or choke you, the ideas, like the bigger, broader ideas in terms of what you should be thinking about or trying to do when you train is way more important than the movement itself for like, you grab the wrist and bend it back and blah, blah, blah. Agreed. So you got to think about that stuff when it comes to like the defense. Like I said, it's a whole different world, but that same idea applies to the whole like traditional and combat sport debate.
Yeah, no. And let me say this too, to touch on the knife thing a little bit more, is I've trained a good amount of it, and I think it's good for learning certain reflexes and sensitivity. Maybe like you said, getting used to potentially dealing with the knife, even you're using training blades.
Right.
And it's also good for offense if you want to learn how to execute offensively with the blade.
Oh yeah,
and cutting somebody, stabbing somebody, basically the professional way to shank someone. Exactly. And you learn anatomy and where to cut, where to stab. So it's good for all that stuff, but like Ty said, I mean, you got to really learn the tactics. Like, what would you do in that situation? If someone pulls out a knife, are you really going to try to disarm the knife? If you have a larger object near you, let's say there's a chair, you're in a bar, and someone pulls out a knife, are you really going to try to go one-on-one with that, or are you going to pick up the bar stool and smash the dude and get the fuck out of there?
Like the what I'm saying? Style of defense.
Yeah, exactly. Right, bro, exactly.
Grab their head and bang off the...
I don't think anybody...
I'll go full Roadhouse.
I don't care how good you... Right. I don't care how good you are, man. I think... when someone pulls out a knife, man, that's it's a scary fucking thing.
Yeah, that's a whole different world. And I mean, that's, again, there's like these different, like, okay, you got the combat sport guys, and like they're pressure testing. That's why you absolutely, they're doing what they say, right?
Yeah.
then you've got like the traditional people that are like, okay, I'm gonna, do these movements and these stances, and they apply in this way, but maybe they aren't. Some of them are. I know, like for sure, there's definitely some that are really applying that stuff. And then you have like the defensive guys that are like, well, this is how it's gonna be out in the field and in the street when someone blah blah blah.
And it's not like that.
And pulls up. And all of them have like they all have to believe in their dream a little bit, right? Yeah. They're all missing a little something probably. There's always a weakness somewhere, but they have to kind of believe in it. And sometimes you can go a little bit too far into whatever you're getting yourself.
You drink too much Kool-Aid.
Drink a little too much Kool-Aid. One too many sips, right? And now it's a little. You're starting to get a little funky. So it's all good. I think all of it is good. It's just you have to know and be serious and be realistic about what you're doing and what it's actually going to do for you.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So what about, talk a little bit about more like the internal arts, like Tai Chi or meditation.
Qigong.
Yeah, so like I said, when I first started, I just did external stuff, right? It's all like physical things. And then when my teacher, politely recommended that I start doing more internal stuff, I wasn't into it because like slowing down and meditating was just not what like a fucking 13-year-old kid that's going off the wall wants to do, right? Fucking right. There's just not. I couldn't settle down. Like I'm like itching in my seat, and I still do today. But it's huge. Like especially like meditation. I cannot recommend that enough for everybody. Yes. And I think every fighter, every competitor, every practitioner, I don't care what you do, should meditate one way or another. And meditation is not always. You have to sit in a certain stance with a robe on and close your eyes and think nothing. Like that's like something, but it's not everything, right? It can just be like learning to be mindful of something or how to focus or how to like unpack something mentally when you're going through. And like the benefits of being able to have that kind of like internal control of your mind is huge in any sport, any competition, any fighting, anything like that. Like there's always going to be a mental component. You can be the strongest person in the world, the fastest person in the world, great endurance, but if you can't get your mind into the right space, you're going to get killed, right?
Yeah.
So like, and not to say like you got to meditate to fight, like that's not, there's a component there, but in anything, like having drive or being able to deal with yourself internally is a really, really important skill and takes practice.
It's probably good for every aspect of life, not even just martial arts.
Yeah, of course. And
definitely, 100%. I could say that. Yeah, from experience.
I think we see it coming from like a lot of the traditional stuff, or like so. Let's say Tai Chi is an internal art, and Tai Chi is a traditional fighting art.
Right. I think a lot of people don't know that. I was going to ask you that.
Tons of people don't know that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fucking bullshito out there.
Bullshito.
People wearing a Tai Chi uniform, waving their arms, and then pointing at someone, and they freak out and fall, and then that gives us a really bad name, right? But it comes from a traditional fighting system and style, but it takes like some of the training and the idea, and it's done as like a beneficial or health benefit, and that's kind of the Qigong. That's what we call Qigong. Right. Qigong means energy work.
Yep.
And that kind of internal is like internal martial arts training. I think is super valuable, particularly for recovery. Like I'm trying to get back into it now because I got a shoulder injury.
Yeah.
And like knowing how to relax and how to start moving your body, and they may call it chi, they might call it energy, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can like describe what that is or what you're trying to do with it. But like if you just think of it as energy, like you can feel when your body is tense, your muscle is tense, and you can feel when it relaxes, right? Like if you pay attention, so the meditation part, and be like, all right, I've got like my shoulders are tense and up. Like if I can close my eyes and focus on it and relax it and learn how to move it and circle it, I'm gonna like get some of that tension out, and I'm going to get better blood flow into my body and lower my blood pressure, and like it can be really, really beneficial. So for rest and recovery, like it's essential for me to have the internal training as well as the external training. And the internal training can go from just, like I said, relaxing and learning to calm down and learning to focus, all the way to like understanding like a deeper mechanic as to how to like develop your joints, or how to develop like the tendons and ligaments in the body and not just the muscles, for prevention for injuries and stuff like that. That's all what we would consider internal training, right? Trying to like build your body, not just like fast and strong, but like really built and mobile and flexible in ways that, you know, you're not maybe naturally sitting with.
Well, it's a whole medical system too. I mean, that's been in existence for thousands of years, that people in the eastern part of the world have been practicing that. It's crossed over now to the Western world, but I think it's very beneficial, even if you're not into martial arts, to explore it, because there's a lot of health benefits, and it's good for your vitality and
for sure.
inner strength and mind. Meditation helps me for sure, and I've done some qigong with you and a little bit of tai chi, and I like it all. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's like the yin and yang balance, right?
Yeah.
And it's been integrated into like Chinese martial arts for so long, and like what's called like medical qigong, or like Chinese medicine, for instance, is always kind of crossed into martial arts training. So like martial qigong and medical qigong, for instance, are like two kind of sides of the same coin, because you have to be strong and you have to be healthy if you're going to fight, and you have to live long enough to be able to defend whatever it is that you're fighting for. So there's like a lot of crossover, but like nowadays you do start like more and more people, or like if we're talking about martial arts, more and more fighters utilize acupuncture and cupping.
Yeah, I've done acupuncture too. It's good stuff.
A lot of my friends do cupping. I've seen a lot.
Yeah, it's great. Like, and you'll see even like Olympic athletes come in. Got those red circles all over their backs and arms and shoulders.
Octopus, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you got attacked by the Kraken, right? And like but like that stuff is producing good results, and like so now we're a little bit more open to it. I feel like maybe a handful of years ago we were a little bit more like that's like
see it a lot.
Quackery, right? Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, do you think that maybe the more new age martial arts systems are missing the internal component? But you're kind of saying now that you've noticed a lot of fighters and stuff like that are actually getting into it.
Yeah, because I think you need to have a balance. So the way that you talk about it in qigong, for instance, is like yin and yang, right? If you're too yang, if you're too outward, if you're focusing too much on the physical, like you're pushing yourself too much, whatever it is in your training, you're gonna naturally, like nature always has a way of balancing itself, right? Something's gonna happen. You're gonna break down, you're gonna get injured, or you're gonna burn out, and you're gonna have to find something that balances that, whether it's PT, which it would be a qigong. It's what we would call qigong in Chinese martial arts, but we'd call it physical therapy or whatever, or like something to help, like acupuncture or anything like that. Changing your diet, that's also like a big part of like Chinese medicine. So I think people always end up finding it. That's also why you see a lot of people that did a lot of external traditional martial arts find things like Tai Chi later in life, because it's something that they can practice to kind of balance out and continue to go.
Yeah.
More and more people are starting to find that if they go that way, if they use some of those like Chinese medicine or Qigong, Tai Chi or whatever, it helps balance them as they're doing a lot of external or a lot of yang stuff. They got to find a little yin to help that balance.
Agreed. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely important to work your energy and the blood flow, and it's very important, I think. And I think, like I said, even if you're not looking to fight and get into the external stuff as much, check out the internal styles, because they're very beneficial.
For sure. Yeah. They can get a bad name, they can get a bad rap sometimes, like everything else before, but that's like sometimes you got to get them in with like, oh look, we got a ring, you come in, we fight, and then they start breaking down like, oh, okay, do these exercises, it'll help. And you trick them, don't tell them it's Tai Chi. You're like, haha, motherfucker. I made you do Tai Chi, you didn't even know it.
So what are some of your future plans for the gym now, especially with the COVID situation, and where do you see maybe competing and everything going?
I mean, with COVID, we don't know. We're just trying to make our way through it and just figure out when we can really get more and more people in here, and when people will feel more comfortable about it and stuff like that. But I mean, our plan is to try to start training and start getting a fight team, and getting people that want to compete, and trying to start making some moves in the U.S. with the Chinese martial arts competitions. Like I said, there's not a ton. So I'm like, my goal is to not just go and like put guys in competitions, but to absolutely fucking kill competition here.
Yeah, you want to make an impression, everlasting impression.
Yeah, we're stepping up the game, bro. Like that's the whole idea behind this gym, is to try to legitimize Chinese martial arts a little bit within like that competition community. And so we're gonna start by getting into what little competition there is here and showing people like you can take this more seriously. There's a higher level than what's being offered right now. And so we're gonna try to compete in Sanda. We're gonna try to compete in Shuai Jiao, and really try to bring up the level in general. And then we'll see from there, see what people want to do and kind of what we have for coaches and stuff here that want to start branching out and seeing what Sanda training can bring to the MMA community and the kickboxing community at large and the wrestling community with Shuai Jiao and stuff like that. And then, go from there.
So, but you think COVID's thrown a monkey wrench into that process?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, our numbers are slow and small right now, right? Nobody's training and there's not a lot of competitions. Like none of the Chinese martial arts competitions that normally happen are happening at all this year.
Yeah.
And so far there's nothing that's been announced or even scheduled for next year. So opportunity to even do those things is scarce because of COVID. We're just hoping, and we don't know, coming out of it, they might not do it.
Now nobody knows any fucking thing.
Yeah. So who even knows if we'll have opportunities to do that, and if those organizations will even be around coming out of this. And just the way that we've had to modify, and especially in the beginning, we didn't have any contact or anything like that. And that.
And they're talking about shutting it down too, like gyms and stuff again.
Yeah, if they shut down, it's going to be tough.
It's going to be tough, right?
We did some online stuff, and I was not into it at first. I was really not looking forward to fucking teaching online classes, but I kind of felt like we had to do something, otherwise we're going to fall off the face of the earth.
How'd that work?
It actually worked better than I expected. It's funny because as a coach, one of the biggest things that you're always looking is fucking students need to do basics. They need to run fundamentals and they need to do those initial things. They're not always the most fun. It's not like you're sparring right away, but it's the most important.
Yeah.
And it almost forced everybody to do a little bit of fundamental training, even if they had been training for a long time. So it ended up going a little smoother than I expected in starting to teach online and offer that, because for basic shadow boxing and mechanics, footwork, things like that, it gave you an opportunity to just focus on that, and it gave people a way of getting some body weight conditioning exercises, and if you had a bag at home, it's even better. If you had a kettlebell, even better.
Yeah.
But it gave people some tools to at least stay active and not slip back into bad habits or lose everything. So we'll see if it shuts down again. That's probably the only thing we're going to be able to do.
Are you guys still doing that?
The online stuff?
Yeah.
No, we ended once classes started happening here, there was only a couple people coming in. We had more online people. Then the online people started coming in. We had less online of an online crowd. And so then we ended up, last month, we sort of nixed the online program. We offer workshops and seminars once a month. And then anybody from anywhere can log in and kind of get the info.
Yeah, so it's not just a local thing. You don't have to drive an hour or so. You can do it. Somebody in California could hypothetically just log on and learn your style.
And then it's up to them to train it, you know, and stuff like that. But it ended up getting too hard to focus on people at home and here in the gym, and the folks at home don't have a bag. They don't always have a partner. So it was running two classes with one coach at the same time was just a little too difficult. But if we have to go back into it, we might. But the biggest problem, right, anyone's going to tell you is you don't have any partner work, you're not going to get any of those reactionary skills. And if you can't work, there's not that there's no benefit. There's definitely stuff you can do solo and get better at, but that's only going to get you so far. And burnout is a thing, right? If students or whatever are getting bored, then they're not going to train. So you have to kind of balance all of that. So we'll see.
Do you think the future is looking uncertain for combat sports in general?
Yeah, I mean, there's the big promotions are doing fights again, right? You see stuff happening with the UFC and the Bellator, but even there, there's been bumps in the road for things like that, and you're seeing people that are fighting having hard times with their camps because maybe they don't have as many partners to spar with, or their coaches aren't right there. Your resources are a little bit thin right now. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle for fighters and it's a struggle for promoters. And right now, there's no small promotions.
No,
happening,
I was just going to say that.
That's the thing. And like I said, in Sanda, it's all small promotions.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
So it's really uncertain because if you have something that was
tough with all this COVID shit because you don't know if it wasn't no COVID, then you guys would probably have tons of plans to go on. You know what I mean? But now it's tough to judge anything and make a plan because you don't even have a fucking timeline.
Right, we'd be way ahead on everything, and we'd be making plans for competitions, and then you kind of know how to set up your camps and blah blah blah. Now it's like, well, we're all gonna try, but like
you never know when they're gonna be. They're gonna be like, yeah, okay, it's COVID's done. You guys go back to fucking normal life.
I don't know, man.
Or even how, like, if competitions start, like, how are they gonna do it?
You're gonna fight
like,
with masks on.
Yeah, you're gonna fight with masks on. Or like, how many people are you gonna be able to get to go there? Or like, if you rely on selling tickets to make your money or something, like, how are you gonna do that?
Other shows with the merch and tickets, like with the MMA fighters and stuff. That's how they make their money.
Exactly.
Ticket sales and merch. And if you don't have people, if you're just fighting in a
empty
gymnasium and no one's there, so you're not making no money. Right? So they're not hosting these events.
It makes it difficult just to even consider what you're going to do or how you're going to do it or how you're going to approach it. Like, we have those general goals, those big goals, but we don't know when or how we're going to execute it, because right now
everything's unstable.
And everything's so unsettled and unsteady, and no information about how we're going to go about opening any kind of like competition back up.
Such an uncertain time.
Level.
Yeah, the local promotions. It's really tough because, Rob just said, and other people have said that they rely on the crowd. They rely on the ticket sales. They rely on selling merch and food and whatever else, when you go. And only the top dogs can afford to have events with no one in the crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. So across the board, any combat sport, we'll see. We'll just see what we get, or like, and even who's competing, right? Like, some people might feel like, I haven't been able to train, so I'm not ready to compete here. And then that's gonna, even when things do open up, that might make it a slow start for the organizations, which means they might not be getting their money, and they might not be putting on those kinds of events.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Now, we'll get off topic a little bit away from the martial arts. Talk about like music. I know you playing in bands. I know you and Chris did stuff together.
Yeah, you played in a couple bands, right?
Yeah, I always played like punk and hardcore. Like, from bands in high school, doing like weird punk stuff and hardcore stuff. I played in a band called Kingdom out of Philly. I played in a band called Unrestrained. I've always been into like the music scene and stuff like that. Like, my father's a musician. He's a jazz guitarist. He was like the head of the jazz department for the Concord Community Music School. But like, first and foremost, he's a musician. He plays, plays out. And so I grew up around music. I played drums, I played bass, I played guitar, and that's probably primarily what I do is play guitar. But I've always been into like punk and hardcore. So like, I've always gone to shows, and I've always filled in for people in bands and stuff like that. Just like, oh shit, we got to go on tour. We don't have a guitarist. All right,
you'll jump in, hit the road.
Yeah, hitting the road. Or, oh shit, we don't have a bass player for this. These 3 weekends. Okay, I'll jump in. So. I grew up in that community. Like, my brothers, I have older brothers, and they were into punk and hardcore, and they got me into punk and hardcore at like a certain.
You come from music anyway. Your father's a musician.
Really young age, we were just music was always a part of who I was and what we did in our family and stuff like that.
At about what age did you start getting into punk and hardcore and stuff?
I was going to shows when I was like 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had older brothers, you said, right?
Yeah.
So they would just bring you, would just tag along?
Yeah, I was like, sometimes even now, like, you'll see like the little kids wearing headphones. I didn't wear any like headphones or anything. It's for shit. But like, I was always going to shows. Like, I was just like that one random little kid that would be there. And like, I remember going to, shout out to the Elvis Room in fucking Portsmouth, New Hampshire. But like, I remember standing in the back, and like, one of the dudes that worked there being like, just stand up on the edge of the pool table so you can see, and like watching bands, like hardcore bands playing there. So I've been going for forever and ever, like since I was little. As long.
Who are some of your favorite bands coming up?
I listen to New York hardcore.
No doubt, man. I already know.
Madball, AF, Scarhead. Like, I like that stuff. That's always been like what I listen to, and I like Terror and stuff like that. Like some of like the newer kind of hardcore bands that are around, but. New York hardcore was always what I was drawn to in that scene. Yeah,
man, for sure. Do you find like some similarities between the martial arts community and maybe the hardcore community? Because I think I do.
Yeah,
with like the camaraderie and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Like, it's hard to explain, I think, sometimes to people that maybe aren't in either of those communities. But
like a brotherhood kind of thing.
Yeah, like it's a very tight community, but you also stand alone in it, where like you have to be you, and if you're anything but that, you're just not going to survive. And like, I can say that in the hardcore community, like, you have to be able to stand and for yourself, and then if you can do that, you're going to stand with like the people in that community, right? You're going to have like some commonality there. So like in the fighting community or like martial arts, like you have to be able to train, right? You have to be able to push yourself and you have to be able to be uncomfortable. And if you can do that, you're going to find other people that can do that. And you're going to find like sort of that brotherhood there, right? That community. And it's testing, it's trials and tribulations, and like that's what I mean. Listen to all the old hardcore bands, like that's what they sing about,
exactly,
and that's what you have to go through when you're training, and that's a lot of times the stuff that you go through in life is why people train, you know. And so there's I feel like a draw when people have to deal with, you know, just like the weight of the world and like the shit that fucking comes with living. You know, the way that somebody like manages that. A lot. Like sometimes they're drawn to hardcore. Sometimes they're drawn to training because it gives them focus. It gives them drive. And when you can do that, you can find community, and that's what brings people in.
The craziest people are drawn to both. Me and you. You gotta be double. You gotta be double crazy to be into all this shit, dude.
Prince of punishment. Like I said, you go to a show, you're gonna get sweaty and beat up. Like you go to a gym, you're gonna get sweaty and beat up. Like those are your two. That's what you're doing when you go.
So, what are your that you can speak on? What are your upcoming plans for the gym and yourself?
Right now, we're just training and growing, man. Like we're just trying to get our numbers up. Like we've got a good little group training right now. We train everybody from the casual practitioner that's just trying to get off the couch and get into shape to guys that, you know, want to fight or at least think they want to fight. Yep. I kind of have to go through that process. Guys that have competed and want to get back into it or keep their skills sharp. So we're just trying to grow. Like our numbers are small right now. Our classes are small. We're a brand new gym. You know, nobody really knows about us, and we couldn't like have like a proper grand opening or anything. So we're just trying to stay alive. And then for myself, I'm just training. I'm trying to train to compete. I'm trying to come out in 2021 strong with competition in both Sanda and Shuai Jiao. So I'm just training. I train, you know, every day.
No doubt.
Building out my schedule. I'm here fucking 11, 12 hours a day every day. Except for Sunday, and now
we dragged you in because of us. He's like, my one day off, I got to come back to the gym to do a podcast.
I mean, you know, brand new business, and you know, as a business owner, you're going to put everything into it. So
absolutely.
It works out that it's a place where I can train for myself here as I'm, you know, running the ship. And, so right now it's just spreading awareness, like getting.
And you're doing it all, you know, as far as teaching and stuff. You're doing it by yourself. Well, you got a jiu-jitsu coach here.
We've got Paul Lefty's coming in and teaching our jiu-jitsu, and our plan is to grow. Like originally we had the idea, like this is a big enough facility, you could run 2 programs in this gym.
Oh, definitely,
no problem. It's big. We got the ring. We got a space to the side. We've got a big mat space. It's plenty. So originally we were thinking, okay, we'll have like some front desk help. We'll get a couple of instructors, get a kids instructor coming in, and we'll be able to run a bunch of programs. Then with COVID and everything and like not being able to even open when we were planning to, it was like, well, we are going to dip into our savings. You know, we had planned to have some, we just didn't think we were going to have to use it. You know, it was like the backup just in case, but just in case came. So
just in case is right here on our front fucking door.
Yeah, exactly. So we had to, you know, burn into our reserves just to get the lights on and to start to build everything out and, you know, to start getting stuff going. So right now, like it's just me and our one BJJ coach running everything. So I teach all of the classes. I do all of the front desk work, all of our emails. All the upkeep on the building, it's all me right now. So it's a full-time job with another full-time job, part-time job.
You're putting the work in, you're grinding, bro. But I do see the progression in the class numbers. I mean, you know, from when I first started coming here to train, and then to, you know, I've seen more people coming in. So you're getting there, and it's tough in this right now with what's going on. So just keep plugging, you know.
Yeah, man. Name of the game is just to survive right now. Yeah. Like that's what we're hoping. If we can get through basically the end of the year, if we're still here, we're going to be doing good, and I think we will.
Yeah,
we're not in like, not to say we're about to, you know, close tomorrow if something happens. Like we're doing okay, but we're brand new. So if we can make it through that come spring, especially if things start to open up and we can actually like get more people in here and start running. We've got we had all these seminars planned for the summer and stuff that we weren't able to do. A bunch of people we were going to bring in, and like we just weren't able to do it. But we'll be okay. So if we can get to next spring, we'll be crushing it. Like that's the play.
Oh yeah. Do you what as far as like movie wise for kung fu movies? What would be maybe the most realistic or your favorites?
Most realistic.
That's tough. That's a tough one.
Most realistic would probably be Star Wars. Really good at Qigong. You use the Force, bro. That's the whole thing. You use the Qi. So I mean, like for me, the like Jet Li movies were like the thing that really got me. And some of the old Jackie Chan movies and Jet Li movies. Like I loved Bruce Lee. I loved the Shaw Brothers. A lot of the old stuff. And like 36 Chambers, like the old Shaolin, like the classics. Clan of the White Lotus and stuff like that, and Five Deadly Venoms. So, Cripple.
Not the most realistic, but still classic.
Not the most realistic, but classic. But then like the original Drunken Master with Jackie Chan, he did too. He like did a remake later on, or like Legend of the Drunken Master or something like that. But like, the original Drunken Master, Snake and Eagle's Shadow, were like these old movies that Jackie Chan did that was like about kung fu, like about training and nothing like mystical or anything, just like good kung fu and then like cool choreographed scenes, and it was awesome. I loved those movies. Jet Li's Fist of Legend,
yeah, like that's a good one.
The remake of the Bruce Lee movie, was like probably one of my all-time favorite martial arts movies. That was like I put that on and I want to train. Like I see him training in the way that he like moves and fights, and like the fight scenes are just so good in that. That and there was a movie called Twin Warriors that I think they re-released called like Tai Chi Master.
Oh yeah.
Where they're like two kids in Shaolin, and they end up getting kicked out of Shaolin. One's kind of a troublemaker, and like one was like kind of like the good guy. It was like Jet Li, and then they, I won't spoil it for you, but they have some trials of their own, and like as kind of corny as it is, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I thought
that was a good one.
It was a great movie. Like there's a lot in that movie. Like if you're in the traditional Chinese martial arts community, there was a lot in that movie that like connects kind of culturally into like the student and teacher like kind of dynamic and stuff, and some of the fights were just really, really good. But like I like those kind of classic kung fu flicks, like action martial arts, like the Jason Statham kind of style are good. Like I really like that stuff.
Cool to watch, but
like the Expendables is cool, but it's like a little too much explosion and like car crash, and like I like that stuff, but it's not. It's action, not.
It's not really rooted in. Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. How do you feel about the Ip Man series?
I haven't, to be perfectly honest, I haven't seen them all.
Okay.
The first like 2 or 3 that they put out were really good. I liked them. I thought it was like good storytelling. I really liked Donnie Yen. The ones with
Donnie Yen's good.
Were the ones that like I really liked. I don't do Wing Chun, but Wing Chun, like I said, is like a sister style to White Crane. So there's like cool stuff that I'm like, oh, we do like similar movements and things like that. And of course, it's like for Hollywood, so it's all sorts of done up. But I really liked them. I thought they were good, but I had not seen the whole series because there could be
some of them
bomb in there that really you never know.
I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, so I figured I'd ask. So why don't you give out your social media, your website, your contacts, where people can reach you and where they can check out Sanda Fighting Arts?
Yeah, you can find us on our website is sandafightingarts.com. You can catch us there. Our like class schedule and description and everything's there, as well as all our socials. Facebook, Sanda Fighting Arts, Facebook / Sanda Fighting Arts. Our Instagram, Sanda_fighting_arts. And then my Instagram is at Coach Tye Tonkin, TyeTonkin. But yeah, like if you search Sanda Fighting Arts pretty much anywhere, we're going to pop up because, like I said, there's not a lot of Sanda gyms. At least in the U.S., there's not a lot of Sanda gyms, so like it's pretty easy to find us. But Sanda Fighting Arts pretty much across the board.
So make sure you check out all those social media and the website and everything else to get all the proper information. And we'll be posting those links up on our social media in the description for the show. And if you're looking to get into some martial arts and you're in the area, make sure you come check it out because we've said it, but it's a great facility.
Yeah, it is really
great instructor.
We can talk about it, but you guys got to come and check it out.
Yeah, you got to check it out. It's a very nice gym.
Get punched in the face, thrown to the ground. You got fingers broken. We'll do everything for you.
You got any shout outs you want to give to anybody?
Nah, fuck everyone.
Yeah, cool. That's cool.
Shout out to you guys, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Well, shout out to you.
Street Corner Soapbox,
I think
cool, man. I'm really digging the podcast.
Thank you, man. Coach Tye is a great example of a martial artist, a teacher.
Fucking whole life.
Yeah, I mean, he's dedicated his life to the arts, and he's also a continuing student. He's doesn't have an ego like I'm the best and all that thing. He's humble and down to earth, and constantly progressing. You have to, you know what I mean? And you should definitely check it out over here.
That's what it's about.
And he knows what he's talking about. He knows the history, and he's trying to bring Kung Fu, Chinese martial arts, I would say back to the forefront, or at least like, you know.
That's good because I was thinking the same thing.
Right. Well, where because, you know, he said, not to go off on a tangent, but.
Here we go.
No, but, you know, kind of Kung Fu and stuff has kind of fell to the background in these modern times.
Yeah,
and
sure.
a lot of people are just not aware of it. They're ignorant to it. And even me, like, I mean, I knew about it being into martial arts myself.
I think a lot of people like it, but they don't maybe not know, or they're not sure.
Well, yeah, or they see it from the movie standpoint.
It needs to be repackaged.
Yeah.
I agree, exactly, and that's what you're doing, and you're doing a good job of that.
Trick people into learning it, like I said.
But no, you're doing a great job, bro, and you know, continued success to you, and thank you for coming on. That was great.
Yeah, Coach, thank you for coming. Giving up your Sunday, you know.
I appreciate it, man. Anytime, I really appreciate
Coach
it.
Tye Tonkin, everybody. Make sure you check out Sanda Fighting Arts everywhere.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, my brother.
Bro.
Street Corner Soapbox, we're fucking out of here.
Peace. Follow us on Instagram at street_corner_soapbox.
Don't forget, guys, check us out. Like us on Facebook at Street Corner Soapbox.
And subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher.
And all digital platforms. Don't forget, all of our episodes are going to be on streetcornersoapbox.com. Love you all.